Hello. Good afternoon, Juliana.
Thank you for coming in and inviting me into your space and your audience. It's really cool, actually. This is my first time doing a live on 7 different channels. So
Perfect.
thank you
Well,
for that
well,
introduction.
welcome. And we've got some exciting stuff to talk about today. I know we met and mutually connected through LinkedIn, but really in and around the topic of transformation. And I love connecting with other individuals, and of course, we reflect that out. So, right, what the energy we give out, we give back. So it's not surprising, but it's also always for me very empowering to see that the individuals that I'm attracting are going through a kind of a similar period in their life, and transformation. And we all know that it feels good to be among others with understanding for kind of what we're going through, and also encouragement, right? We're both have been through a period of transition, and also coaches now to help others find their path to their own transformation. And so, just a quick introduction for me. I'm Kelly Dalbach. I'm coach for corporate executives looking to define their future and their version of freedom. And I'm joined today with Juliana, who is actually going to lead our discussion and talking about the power of the pivot and what that's meant in my life and my journey, and also learn a little bit about how that transformation has portrayed her version of her future and her version of her life. So, Juliana, you want to take it over?
Yeah. So, hi, everyone. My name is Juliana Lindner. I'm the founder of All in Harmony, and I am a both energetic and mindset coach, as well as a spirit guide. So, I help individuals drop their excuses and really come into and honor their commitments, really realizing what is true for them. And that displays itself in different ways where we can meet ourselves in an experience, and we have that decision, that point of decision to choose either path A or path B. And so this is why this is so meaningful for me to bring into a space like this to share in our stories, right? Collaboratively, we have different stories, but they resonate on a very similar level of the power to choose and the power to pivot, and what that displays in our life thereafter, because every choice then has a ripple effect. So I'm so glad that this is a brand new project for me to really voice the empowerment of taking that power back in a split decision to say, I am not where I want to be, and I'm no longer accepting that for me. So, uh, like you said, I believe the moment we started talking, I knew that something special would come from this. And when I was putting the ideas together for this new project on my podcast, I was like, Kelly, I'm going to reach out to Kelly. So I'm excited that we're doing this right now.
Awesome. I'm excited to be here. So,
Yeah.
where do we dig in when we talk about a pivot? There's, so much going on in
Right.
all of our lives and all of our collective lives, right? Sometimes I know for me, I get sucked into the day to day of what's going on in my life. It's like, okay, we got to take a step back and realize that there's a degree of change and adjustment and transformation going on in everyone's life. So it's like I said, it's opens a door for understanding amongst us all, that we all have our own things going on.
Yeah, and I think it's good to look at two sides of the coins, and we've discussed duality several times in our conversations, and it's that point where we can have the energy of high energy, and that sometimes leads to what would be considered a breaking point or burnout, and then the other side of the coin that displays an opportunity to choose and to pivot is what I even feel currently, which is the pivot into this new project, which is it's almost a calm before the storm, in a sense that there's this feeling of it's like a lull, it's a dullness, it's a calm, it's a centrality of I'm not really sure where this is going to go. I'm not really sure what is going to happen. I don't know the answers. And so both of those sides of the coin can lead you to that very next step. So what I would like for you to share is that pivotal moment for you to make a drastic decision in your life in regards to your career and your profession. And so what that moment looked for you, and what side of the coin did you see in that moment?
Yeah. So the moment I chose to pivot is kind of a very direct way of looking at it and of asking it and for me to think about it. However, it was really a series or a period of evolutionary kind of change in my own self that led up to the moment. I was looking for a way out, or a way to live life differently than what I was living. And in my mind, I was referring to that as freedom, right? And what I thought it was at the time was the freedom from corporate America, or the freedom of the golden handcuffs, like the freedom, like the physical freedom, not working for someone, or work, kind of that ability to manage my own schedule. And while that was part of it, what I've come to realize now, 18 months later, I was seeking freedom, but what the freedom actually I was seeking was liberation from my own limitations and my own mindsets and identities and limiting beliefs. So I was projecting it as freedom from these things, in whether it was like workplace, or social obligations, or what I felt like I needed to do. It was really my own projection of like, I don't want to be these things anymore and live this way. But it wasn't specifically, I can say now, the actual circumstance, if that makes sense. So all of that to say, the moment I chose to pivot was the moment that I found a circumstance to replace it, which was becoming a professional certified coach and going through a program that I identified as, okay, I can start my own practice and I can start my own business. So I was essentially found another circumstance to replace the current circumstance that I thought was going to create the freedom. But again, 18 months later, I'm realizing that it's not the circumstance at all. It's actually, like I said, my own limitations and my own beliefs, my own identities, I was so deeply searching and trying to release.
Kelly, that I know that there's definitely some pain points in there along the way, but my heart is singing, because it's that realization, and just your explanation of that is something that really resonates with me, and I know for the public will resonate as well. When you're seeking an answer outside of yourself that is going to maybe, so to speak, dust that fairy dust on you, to say, here's freedom and liberation through this next step, and divulging into the inner world of like your belief system, and how you identified in the world, and where you belonged, and your purpose, and those things. It was a byproduct, and this is what I have felt, is a byproduct of making that choice. So the choice itself doesn't lead you into what you're seeking, but the byproduct of making that choice, and everything that you've had to, strategically and not strategically go through, gives you that point of view and perspective change that you would not have seen without the pivot, so to speak.
Right. And when the title of this is so interesting in terms of like both sides of the coin, because the title is The Power of the Pivot. But as you just mentioned, like the conscious choice and the unconscious choice of what happened as a result of the decision, it's also the surrender of the pivot, I would add to that. So it's like the power and the surrender of the pivot. But either way, it's happening and it happened. So
Yeah. Which, I mean, that can take a lot of different directions, but things that stand out to me is an acceptance of simply the and statements of who we are and what life brings to us is we are both striving and satisfied. I remember when Brendan Burchard said that this was like years ago, listening to a podcast. And I was like, how do you get there? And, playing with those energies of both our feminine and our masculine, and what I consider very much a dance, because without the idea or the almost the sensation of dancing through those energies is where the constriction that doesn't really allow a surrender into, okay, what's happening next? Because there's a level of our mind getting fixated on an outcome. And when we're fixated and we are trying to anticipate and control what's about to happen or what's coming through for us in our world, we're definitely not surrendering. We're doing the opposite of surrendering. And as a business owner who's working on mindset and energetics, this has been very clear to me. In the beginning, it wasn't so clear. I was like, why is this happening? What's going on? And the more I tuned back in and turned it and rotated the mirror, so to speak, it became much more clear. What do you feel like is the aspect of being, like, when you made that choice to go from working for somebody else to working for yourself, what perspective did you feel that you had, like, skillful mastery over, and what the other side of that, what do you feel like was a challenge for you?
So I think the skillful mastery was the business development aspect of building a business. So the understanding that I wanted to offer services and come to market with services, and identifying and kind of cutting out what those services were, and then putting together a strategy to come to market. Because in business, I have a very clear understanding of what I would call business fundamentals, right? You build a business in the same way, regardless of what the business product or service is. And so I feel very comfortable and confident in that aspect, and have taught that aspect to my clients. It's more the tangible aspects of business. It's like basketball, right? It's like, how many free throws are you going to shoot? Well, how many outreaches are you going to do? How good are you going to get? It's the consistency, the origination, the practice, the fundamentals of business. Would I would say would be closer to mastery. And then what I would say in being the owner of the business, especially in a solopreneur business, because I believe a solopreneur business of kind of being your own product or service is very different than being the CEO of a business of which you're offering services and products. So specifically being a solopreneur, as you had already mentioned, it is not literally not being able, like the universe will not reward things or allow you to produce like businesses that are out of alignment with your own values. Now, I say that as, again, it's so important for me to say a solopreneur, as opposed to, like I said, I think you can be a lot more creative, and there is more freedom in creating a business when it's not you as a service or product. it's more on the fundamental side. But when it comes to you as a leader or a coach or a consultant or a mentor or a speaker, that is where there was a ton of learning. And so for that, the mastery was like really low on releasing expectation of where that would lead, and thinking that it was, headed in one direction. But really, I was understanding and coming to know myself in the process. So releasing what that looked like and allowing myself to align and lean into my passions, I now have a much clearer understanding of who I am, where I want to go. But again, starting out, that is an extraordinarily vulnerable process, to not know, and being vulnerable. And I mean, humble to a certain degree. I feel like I actually had a characteristic and morale of being humble throughout my career, but really truly vulnerable is something that I was not good at, but now feel better at as this has progressed.
Yeah. And that point of being a solopreneur versus a CEO is really something that a lot of, like, I was not aware of that in the beginning, like yourself, not realizing how much of my vulnerability would be tested in a very good way, in a way that I always see this beautiful arrangement of, what is happening in my life directed towards professional development and business development is actually equally, if not more, benefiting my personal life. And
Right.
and I can see that in the relationship with my daughter, she is the reason I started my business. She is also the reason I started my healing journey about 2 years ago, and really deep diving into healing, because I was walking around on personal development and podcasts and reading books. I was always curious, but not at the point where I knew, or I think I just had I was a little ignorant to what was available to me, and obviously subconsciously also resistant to going there. So there was equal parts of that. But my daughter has been directing and leading my way. I call her my spiritual partner. And I know that everything, based on what you've said so far and what we've already talked about in multiple conversations, what do you feel like has been, now I said this in the beginning, so I'm kind of circling back, what has been the ripple effect of making that personal choice for you as well as professional choice to go into your own business and solopreneurship? What has that rippled into in terms of your relationships?
So what I've really realized, kind of one of my phrases that is very profound in my discovery period, is that healing humanity. And that's not only like part of what I am doing on my own, but it's also really rooted in part of who I am. And so that's what I would say is my highest intentional guiding light in my business and what I'm doing. And I know and understand that obviously it all begins with me. And so as I've taken as much focus on my business as I have on my own healing journey and that sort of thing, and looking inside, and what are the beliefs and what are the mindsets and what are some of the wounds and the trauma of what I've experienced at this point in my life is all part of that. So the ripple effects is full acceptance, right? That's what healing means to me, is full acceptance of what is, and that there is a unique pathway for each individual on this planet to get there. And only out of acceptance and true forgiveness for what we've been through up to this point of our lives can we have the capacity for unconditional love and for humanity which in itself is a healed humanity, would be unconditional love, for ourselves and one another. And so as a byproduct of someone that does heal and have unconditional love for themselves, you're creating space and free attention for others, even in just your presence and your very being. If you are someone that has done that, you don't have to say a lot. The power is not in the word. The power really is in the space and in the attention and in the active listening. And that is the ripple effect. And it doesn't have to be, I do it professionally, as a coach or, in a paid session. I do it with everyone I can come into contact with now, out in public, while I'm driving, in the grocery store, in the professional, personal, spiritual setting. And so that is the ripple effect, my free attention, space, and healing that is a byproduct of the work that I'm doing on myself.
Wow, Kelly, thank you for going in that direction, because it says a lot. It says a lot about what this process looks like, what this journey looks like, and how selfishly unselfish or unselfishly selfish
Yeah.
the healing journey is, because it really does begin with you. But the unspoken truth of healing yourself is that exactly what you said, you create the space for others. And what I really see is role modeling. And role modeling to me is not the person who preaches something and advises people.
Right.
Role modeling is showing up in the way that stands in itself as powerful, purposeful, and leads people to say, I can, if they're doing that, I can do that. And it restores hope.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things that happen with a role model that doesn't necessarily speak of their power, but presents their power. And that's what I see in a lot of entrepreneurial roles that can be swayed and tested, because we're vocalizing and projecting what we're capable of doing and are advising of others. And energetically, when we just stand in our power and have those tough conversations with ourselves, understanding that if I have this honest, raw, tough conversation with myself, I therefore leave that space and hold that space for someone to do the same thereafter me, whether it's literally in the physical world or just energetically around us. It's a ripple in the electromagnetic field. Yeah, that feels really good. I'm lit up right now, because this in itself, your message and what you're speaking, is incredibly powerful. And for someone to be in a situation where they're either stepping into a leadership role or they already are a leader, it's a time for reflection. Again, turning that mirror around and looking at how you show up in the world. And so,
yeah, and again, to kind of go back to where I thought I was going on this entrepreneurial journey in the teaching and the advising, is absolutely not where I am currently. And I'm okay with that. And I'm actually really grateful, because, the teaching and advising for me is something that I can do outside or within other arenas of work or employment that I don't have to do in my own business. Because in my own business, it's all about what you had said, like the energy and the holding space. It's about doing the work myself and allowing others to explore their own path, because it's definitely not going to look like mine, And so it's giving them that empowerment and that love and that safe space to be curious and vulnerable. And so we have our skills that are kind of what I would say, really critical to the workforce and the workforce economy. And then we have our um, skills and our gifts of love and acceptance that can really, that's enough. Like, I don't know how to say it other than that's enough. That's enough. And it's difficult to put a word on it. But that's why I think I struggle with it so much initially. But just being you and being the most authentic version of yourself is going to attract people to you, as opposed to having to go out with this message of what you can teach and deliver and give them in this. Because like me, others are going to grab on to the change in circumstance before they're going to grab, and that's okay, because that's where you start many times. But really, where I would at this point in my journey encourage people to look is for for someone that is going to support you in your self-discovery process with tools and love and encouragement, but not be dictative over what that looks like.
Yeah. When you were describing that, I started to feel a certain sensation in my body. We haven't really touched on sensations or emotions. So I want to give those who are viewing or catching a replay or listening to the podcast a little taste of what that actually feels like when someone is holding space for you to lead yourself when you're not not used to that, and what kind of thoughts or feelings come up when that's happening, like in the grit of it, while you're evolving and your coach or mentor, etc., is holding that space. What does that feel like from your experience, Kelly?
I think from my experience, it allows yourself to move into a place of observation of yourself. And so being able to be in the presence of someone, you can actually witness yourself and teach yourself. So many times we say, even or holding sessions or classes, I will say something that will stop me in my tracks, that I'm like, whoa, I need to like listen to that piece of advice, or like you said, I will kind of get chills, or I'll get some sensation in my body or some emotion that brings my awareness to what I just shared or what someone shared with me, that intuitively tells me what I need to do or what I need to work on. So being amongst a mentor or someone that is supporting you in that way, it's going to reflect in confident self-guidance. And it's not confident necessarily at first, but you're like, wow, I didn't know that about myself. Aha moments, right? Aha moments. And really waking up to start to see your own patterns or your own life unfolding and what you can learn from it. So it feels like you're talking at the same time, looking at someone else's life from an observation standpoint so that you can make course adjustments and changes.
Yeah. It's interesting because when you brought up the chill sensations, like I get that when I'm channeling, I get that when I'm tuning in, dropping into source, when I'm singing, when I'm dancing, like I'm very familiar with that. And yet when I asked that question, I was thinking of this moment where I was working with a coach recently, and he simply was allowing me to lead myself. And it was like, I don't want to say it was painstakingly, like I felt like I guess the sensation for me was like my skin started to crawl and tickle. It was that uncomfortable feeling that a new level or a new me, a deeper sense of me is emerging. So I think of like my she sheds and she rises sacred ceremonies of this serpent, where we are unpeeling, like peeling back and rediscovering who we are. And that feeling of shedding that layer, or shedding the protective layer, the armor that we've put up, actually brings to me a crawling skin sensation. And I know that doesn't sound good, but it's a cue, right? It's a sign that you feel from your body. And that's why tuning into the body is just really beneficial when you're obviously doing, you could be doing your mindfulness practices, when you practice, yoga or fitness. Tuning into the body is just allowing you to take yourself to the next level without getting boxed into a corner or stuck at a plateau, which I often feel like that is something that, social media and coaches will talk about a lot, is that stuck feeling or plateau.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's saying that there's a disconnect in mind and body, or mind and heart. So to allow those feelings to rise up, to acknowledge them, to realize maybe what they're saying, or maybe something that you are missing. But that skin crawling for me is a sign that something is about to emerge, and all I have to do is surrender and trust. And as when I'm doing that, or when I have done that, it's like the dance is at play, and things that come in, things that land, doors that open, feels really easy.
Yeah.
It's when things start to feel, when I resist that feeling, when I disconnect from that feeling, and I do not let myself let go or surrender, that it feels like there's a block. So it is, and listening to those cues have been incredibly helpful on my journey. Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful that you've made that connection. So now you can kind of really sense. And that's so important as we get more comfortable in trusting ourselves. Because remember, myself included, I was always looking outside of myself for guidance and meeting certain expectations. And it's really wobbly at first and scary at first to not have someone telling you, or you listening to someone, or I say someone, it can be expectations, it can be magazines, it can be TV, it can be anything really. When you tune that down and turn yourself up, it can be scary, and as you get better at it and more comfortable with it, like you said, your heart will connect with your mind, and you'll know when you're in that place. But the tuning down phase can, it takes time, and I don't want to minimize that, because it is part of the transformation process.
Yeah. Awesome.
Cool.
Well, I know I feel like there's so many other things that are just popping in my mind, which is the creative play, just happening with a wonderful conversation and connection. And that's really the intention of this, this period and going forward, because I am thrilled that you were part of the first step for me. And so I'm very appreciative. I have one last question, and I'll play around with this as I go along in this project of mine. But considering that we've talked about realizations and obviously the power of the pivot, and two sides of the coin, so to speak. There's a uncomfortable side. There's a more challenging and less desirable or painful side, and then there's the light, airy, blissful, peaceful feeling. I'd love to get your idea or sense of what brings you, after going through that period, what brings you the most joy in your life currently?
I think just identifying what my passions are in this process has allowed me to now align with them and spend time in them. And so for me, I'm passionate about human healing and well-being. And so the more time I spend in that, and also with others in that. So it's aligning with you, Juliana, and having these discussions about a mutual passion. It's taking a hike with my family. It's spending time in nature on the boat fishing. It's allowing myself to really be comfortable in, like, this is not something I do. This is really who I am. It takes it to a new level of joy. And I know that this year really is, in so many ways, all about aligning with our passions. But for those that don't know yet, that's where the work begins. And so, because like I said, we think based on what we should be or whatever, has come into our lives up until this point, that's what we think our passions are. But it's really, it can be, but if you're feeling a little bit out of sorts, like there's more, then it's probably not. And so I think for me to really get to that next level, and where do I find that? For me, it's about spending time in well-being, mind, body, spirit. I mean, everything that you can think of, from yoga to sound baths to spending time in nature to connecting with other coaches and healers. Those are my passions that I'm really diving into, but also respecting and having fun with the part of me that loves to build businesses, right? And allowing myself to be all of the things, because we are both simple and complex humans.
Yeah, that is language and a mantra that's come in through just channeling and walking in the grass and taking a walk with the dogs. It is, I am everything.
Mm-hmm.
I am all of it. And when I speak that, it is a connection to humanity, that we are everything already, and that the joy just is, the joy is like love, is overflowing. It's in abundance. And when we open our eyes to all the areas in which we passionately live through the sense of joy and peace and bliss, those birthrights that we were given when we entered this planet. And yeah, it is all available to us. So I love that you're embracing both sides. Again, the duality of just being, simply being, and also doing and creating, and having that uprise of support to those that are on the path or getting onto the path of business development.
Love it. Well, it was a pleasure, beyond pleasure, to connect with you today, Juliana. And thank you for sharing your audience. And who knows what connections we'll make through this, but appreciate the work that you are doing to contribute to the healing of humanity.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Kelly. Do you have any, I feel like we're at a great point to wrap up, and we've had some amazing takeaways from this conversation already. Is there anything that you would like to ask me before we pop off and say our goodbyes?
I wanted to just share, because I think it came, or just a quick note I was reading as I was kind of preparing for this discussion. And I wanted to share it with you because I think it lands kind of for both of us. And this is not mine, by the way. This is actually a quote from Brian Jarrett. But the greatest impact, which is the focus of where I am in my career, is in my impact phase, right, is where your past, your pain, and your passion overlap. And for me, that was a beautiful frame, because I really feel that's for me where my business will lead into. So I just wanted to share that with you, kind of as a close, and see if that lands.
Awesome. Wow. Thank you so much, Kelly.
Cool.
I feel that in every cell of my body.
Awesome.
Truly, this is like yourself. This is a time for impact.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And have a great rest of your week.
All right. Take care.